Hello, YouTubers. Joe Kersey here on Friday, May 16th, 2014 uh, at 2:30 in the afternoon Eastern Daylight Time. Now, I'm going to tell you a story. Uh, this actually, I don't think about this often, but Paul and I got reminiscing about stuff the other day, and one thing leads to another, and then apropos of nothing, one of you tells someone, the other one something completely off the wall, unrelated. And well, I had told him this before, maybe. I know I haven't told y'all. Um, this involves a trip down, a trip to Michigan State University in it'd be late, very late fall, if not very early winter. Well, very late fall of 1968 or very early winter of 1969. And what had happened is uh, I had taken see, this involves the National Merit Scholarship Test stuff. Now, at the time I took uh, uh, the National Merit Scholarship, it's called, it was like the NMSQT, National Merit Scholarship Qualifying Test. That was a standalone test. Generally in your junior year you took the PSAT, and then if you wished you took the National Merit Scholarship Qualifying Test. There were two separate tests. Now, as I understand it, and it has been the case for, gosh, almost, maybe 25, almost 30 years. The PSAT is now basically used as the equivalent for that sort of situation to determine the semifinalists, and then essentially, I don't know what you had to do to be a finalist nowadays, but at that time, if you were a semifinalist, essentially, short of you, robbing a bank or dropping dead or leaving the country, you were going to be a finalist. At that time, of the finalists, 1,000 of them got $1,000 scholarships. And then there were various other corporate scholarships, far more numerous than the $1,000 offered directly from the National Merit Scholarship Corporation. Most of them far more than $1,000, although who's going to gripe about $1,000, particularly in 1969, which nowadays would be the equivalent of about $5,000. So in that case, I'd taken the NMSQT, and it was designated a semifinalist. Now, it turns out, this is going to sound really braggy and blowing my own horn, but this is just the fact of the matter, that at that time, that was the first National Merit Scholarship semifinalist that Lebanon High School had ever had. And, all right, as we used to say, that and 50 cents will get me to Lazarus on the bus. That's when Lazarus was a downtown department store, in Columbus. This was in Lebanon where I grew up. So, All right, fine. That's a nice little feather. A little feather, another notch on the bedpost. So to speak. And then one day, out of the blue, I mean, completely out of the blue, I got a letter from Michigan State University, the admission office. Now, I hadn't applied to Michigan State. I had thought about maybe perhaps attending there, but that's an out-of-state school. I mean, it wouldn't have been affordable. I mean, so you think about it. There's a lot of things to think about you don't do. Unfortunately, sometimes there are a lot of things you do think about that you do. Well, maybe not unfortunately. So I got this letter, and it was from admissions. That says I've been admitted. I hadn't filled out an application. This isn't like, I've been, on the internet trolling around and clicking, and then some sort of program just generated something. No, I mean, basically what they were doing is they were shotgun admitting all of the National Merit Scholarship semifinalists. Every single one. Well, good for Michigan State. God bless them. So here I was, this was before Ohio State had even admitted me. This is before Yale admitted me. Well, that's another story. Anyway, okay. And, of course, it's one thing to be admitted. It's quite another thing to pay for it. So, it's like, what's in it for me? How much money are you going to give me? Well, as it turns out, nothing. But what they did offer was a chance to go up and stay there for a weekend and participate in and take another test to see if you'd qualify for one of these Michigan State, one of these university offered scholarships. Fair enough. So on the weekend appointed, my folks and myself drove up. I drove in the 1961 ranch wagon because we hadn't gotten the 1969 ranch wagon yet. This is the one that had the 300 cubic inch flathead engine. Had a manual choke. Had all the knobs sticking right up in the air, so that if and no seat belts. Well, there were seat belts. I had insisted my dad install them. He thought I was a bit of a wimp, but he had 2 seat belts installed in the front seat. God bless him. And this is what I was thinking. If you have a crash, you're going to bash your face into the steering wheel. And you're not going to have 12 airbags cushion you. I mean, no, you're taking your chance. So anyway, we drove up to Midland, Michigan, where my sister and brother-in-law lived, and my folks, were going to spend the weekend, and I was then going to head on down to East Lansing, Michigan, to Michigan State University, down 27, US 27. Which I did. Let's see, that was on, the test was on, so we must have driven up there. No, we had to have driven up. We had to have done this in all one fell day. So we had to have started very extremely. Now wait a minute, Joe. Well, suffice to say, I'm on the way down to East Lansing, from Midland, Michigan. So you drive over on that east-west road to 27 and go straight down south to East Lansing. Well, it's either very late fall or very early winter in lower Michigan, and so of course it started snowing. It started snowing a lot. I mean, a lot. Which really turned out not to be the problem. What turned out to be the problem was, this car had a generator. It didn't have an alternator. It had a generator. And, basically this car had a gas gauge and 2 idiot lights and a speedometer. That's what it had. I mean, that's as much information as you got from this car, And so it was like a generator light and an oil pressure light. That's it. And I don't know, there may be a temperature light. Well, fuel gauge temperature light. Well, temperature gauge. Well, it doesn't matter. Those were the olden days. I was surprised it had a heater because, when my dad bought it, a heater was still an option. They didn't automatically come with a heater. So he opted for the heater. He sprung for the heater. So on the way down through this very heavy snowstorm, which, by the way, I mean, I hate to sort of brag, but at that time, I was pretty good at driving on snow. Still am, actually. Actually, I'm worse because the car or the truck starts to think for me, see? So you lose that feel. But at that time, your car didn't think for you. You thought for the car. And so you could control it. And anyway, so on the way down, this thing starts to glow, and I'm thinking, oh, Lord, Well, first of all, I knew as long as I kept the engine running, I was okay. I knew that I didn't need the generator. Well, yes, I did too. I didn't care about whether the battery was going to charge. I could fix that, but yeah, I did. So I was like, oh, come on, get me down to East Lansing. Well, it did. It did. Pulled into the parking lot of where I was supposed to stay. Excuse me. And and I didn't even have to turn the thing off. It just stopped. So, what a useful distraction, when I'm trying to get myself mentally prepared to take this test, So, so I called my folks from a payphone. Remember those payphones, guys? It had to be a collect call to my sister and brother-in-law's place. I bet that caused much joy. And my dad said, well, call, get hold of a tow truck and have it towed the thing and have the generator replaced. And I had my checkbook. This was in the pre-credit card era, guys, or at least pre-credit card era for folks like us. I did have my checkbook. I had a checking account, and I had a moderate amount of cash with me. They had sort of, realized that contingencies could happen. And so I was able to get that arranged after, using the phone book. Remember phone books in phone booths? So, all right. Well, so then, now I have to say I was maybe just a tad late checking into this program. But, well, no, I wasn't late. I did that first time. I went back and I attended to this automotive deal. But it seems that, now see, this is an interesting, this gives you an interesting insight into the Michigan State mentality. Now, God bless Michigan State. My sister went to, well, she did some graduate work at Michigan State, when she wanted to get back, to go back to school and be a DO. My niece went to Michigan State. It's a good school. It is a good school. And at that time, I thought I was going to major in political science. Well, wrong. No. But that's what I thought at the time. So, the next day they had arranged, the university had arranged for us to, be taken around by graduate students in, our, sort of thought about major and be shown things. In addition to just generally showing us the school. So this young woman showed us around, and I can't remember too much what she said about political science, but I do remember what she said. We went into this computer room where the whole room was filled with these big, magnetic tape server type machines. And the air conditioning was on full blast. This is like in January or late December. It was probably mid-January, quite honestly. And she gave me the best piece of advice. Well, one of the 3 or 4 best pieces of advice I've ever had in my life. She said to us, the group, when you're in some sort of administrative nonsense situation, the thing to do is just ignore the rules. Do what you know to be right. And then confront someone with it. Because what are they going to do? It's a fait accompli. Advice I have followed several times in my life, and it has served me well. Well, with that digression, that was the day after what happened the night before. Now, it seems that Michigan State, in an effort to encourage, young national merit scholars or would-be scholars, I mean, depending on the terminology. I'm not trying to trespass on their trademarked, copyrighted terminology. Thought it would be a really neat idea if they could house these folks, i.e. me, people like me, well, people that fell into the category in which I fell. I imagine a couple, 3 of them have been like me. With these jocks, university jocks. Because a lot of universities will house these jocks in their own dedicated dorms. Now, I don't think Michigan State was doing that, but they had like a floor in one of the dorms. I ended up in this big corner room. This is a huge room. It's probably every bit the size of my living room. That's a dorm room, guys. That was a corner, and it was a corner room. And you had 5 of these guys in there. I don't know how many people stayed in there normally. I guess maybe 6, counting the number of beds. There was enough room for 6, if you have the double stack. Hell, actually, there weren't double stack beds. They were all 6 individual beds. And, it was a very jockey, masculine atmosphere. A couple of guys just basically were walking around in jock straps, rubbing themselves, all this. And I'm thinking, so this is how they want people to really, really come come to Michigan State University. And, uh, and of course, I thought, this is, one, this is going to be very frustrating for me. And two, what were all these people thinking? What were all these people thinking? And of course, most of the conversation revolved around, you're going to go get some pussy. It's like, talking about barking up the wrong tree to get somebody to want to come to their university. Well, actually, maybe not. But, so the next day was, we had the tour, and then after the tour, we had to take this test to see if we were going to get a financial aid. And it was, it was a fairly standard test. It wasn't, I can't say it was hard, but I clearly didn't do all that well on it. All right, well, sometimes you don't. So I didn't get any scholarship money offer from Michigan State, so I didn't end up going to Michigan State. But it was a very interesting weekend. Well, and then to finish the car story, the ranch wagon story, the station wagon story. Indeed, it got towed and the generator got replaced and it got paid for and worked fine on the way back and continued to work fine, actually, till the day my mother finally had it hauled off several years after my dad died. So at that time, it had almost like 180,000 miles on it. This would have been around 1979. Got another 10 or 11 years use out of that thing. I love that car. Oh, wow. Standard transmission, 3 on the tree. Unlike the 69, which had a 240 cubic inch engine, this thing actually had a bit of, power in it. It was a 240 cubic inch engine, which my dad had specially ordered on the 69. He deliberately ordered a smaller engine. You had to sort of get a running start on anything you wanted to do. all these, no power this, no power anything. First time I had to use power brakes when I worked for the lawyers, when I drove their cars. It was like I would just squeal the tires. I just, it was like, because the slightest little touch, I still really don't like power brakes. Quite honestly, I'm not that much of a fan of power steering either. I do like fuel-injected engines so that, if you have to pull out fast in traffic, you're not going to stall and get killed. Or as likely to stall and get killed. I finally figured out how to do fuel injection. All right, well, I think, let's see here. I think that covers waterfront. I did mention that I'd gotten accepted to Yale. Very briefly, my first cousin's husband went to Yale, and he said, "Oh, you ought to apply to Yale." So I did. And there was an interview process, and a guy up in Dayton who had gone to Yale interviewed me, and they admitted me. But again, not enough money to go to Yale. Not that I would necessarily want to go. I'm glad I didn't in any case. But at that time, Yale's sort of total package tuition was a little over $8,000 a year. Well, we couldn't have that. And they were offering me $4,000 financial aid, which would still mean $4,000, which was essentially over half of one of my parents' salaries. So that is out of the question. So when I wrote the guy that interviewed me a letter, to tell him that I wasn't going to go to Yale, I got one of the snootiest, horrible replies back. Very similar to the story I told you yesterday by this guy that went, had gone to Harvard. Well, screw you. I mean, why don't you pony up the additional $4,000? I didn't say that, but that's what I thought. Lowlifes abound, even in the best quarters. So, and conversely, sometimes really best lives abound, even in the most unexpected quarters. All right, bye-bye, YouTubers.